How do you identify pawn structure weaknesses? Have you ever wondered how to spot weaknesses in pawn structures during a chess game? Understanding these weaknesses can give you a strategic advantage. Let's break it down in simple terms. First, let's talk about isolated pawns. An isolated pawn is one that has no supporting pawns on adjacent files. For instance, if you have a pawn on the D file with no pawns on the C or E files, that pawn is isolated. It becomes a target for your opponent, who can attack it without fear of support. Next, we have doubled pawns. These occur when two pawns sit on the same file. This often happens after a piece exchange. Doubled pawns are weaker because they cannot support each other. They also block the movement of other pawns, making them less flexible in the game. Then there are backward pawns. A backward pawn is one that is behind other pawns and cannot advance easily. This situation usually arises when opposing pawns or pieces block its path. Backward pawns are vulnerable and can be targeted by your opponent, making them a liability. Now let's discuss pawn islands. A pawn island is a group of pawns that are separated from other pawns by empty files. The fewer pawn islands you have, the stronger your pawn structure. Multiple pawn islands can be hard to defend because they cannot support each other effectively. To identify these weaknesses in practice, start by analyzing pawn chains. A pawn chain is a line of pawns protecting one another. The base of this chain is often the most vulnerable point. If you can target the base, you can undermine the entire structure. Look for the weakest pawn in your opponent's position. This pawn could be isolated, doubled, or backward. By focusing your attacks on this pawn, you can tie down your opponent's pieces, limiting their options and plans. In terms of strategic imbalances, recognizing pawn structure weaknesses can create opportunities for both attack and defense. By understanding these weaknesses, you can create imbalances that your opponent must address. Once you identify a weakness, use your pieces to attack it. This forces your opponent to spend time and resources defending rather than developing their own strategy. Mastering the identification and exploitation of pawn structure weaknesses can give you a significant edge in chess. By turning minor disadvantages into major advantages, you can improve your overall game and increase your chances of victory.